Thank you all for joining XROM. I'm your host, Eddie Avil. Today I have with me Jimmy Alamparambil. He is an augmented reality software architect and expert on mobile AR platforms. He's a full stack mobile development team leader and technical expert in app stores. He's been a game developer and has worked on franchises like Medal of Honor, GoldenEye, CNC, CSI, NCIS, Spartacus, and the list goes on. He's also the author of Unity AR and VR by Tutorials, the first edition. And he's the man behind the Unity ARkit plugin and Unity ARkit remote integration, and has been part of companies such as Jam City, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Unity Technologies, Magic Leap, and is currently the senior computer scientist at Adobe. Jimmy, it's a pleasure and honor to have you on XRO podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time being part of the show. So you've been part of some really, really cool companies. So can you start by sharing your background and journey in the AR VR field?
Sure. I mean, thank you very much for that awesome introduction. You covered pretty much most of everything of what I've done. You give a pretty good summary of my kind of career. I originally started in graphics back in the day at ATI. So I was very interested in graphics, and I think I was interested in games before that. So games, I started working on Commodore 64s when I was a kid and started trying to get all these sprites going and stuff like that. So graphics was a main focus of that endeavor. And then when I started working at ATI, and then from there I progressed to working at actual game companies and working on games. So even before I started in games, back in '95, I had my first kind of VR experience. If you think about the Sega Palladium, in Canada, they had this kind of amusement park sort of place where you would have this VR headset that you would put on, and then there would be another person who has a VR headset as well, kind of a bit far away from you, and you're both in this shared world where you're kind of fighting against each other with lasers and stuff like that. So, and the world itself was very it wasn't very realistic. It was all polygonal, if you remember back in the day, it was just kind of single color polygons that were trying to emulate what a 3D model would look like. But it captured the essence of what spatial computing is essentially you are immersed in this world and you're able to kind of navigate it. It's not watching a flat screen, watching a projection on a flat screen. It's more like you are within that world and you're kind of traveling within it. So that already gives me that feeling of being immersed in some different world. So if you fast forward to being at Ubisoft, I'm working at Ubisoft, I was a technology director there, working on a bunch of games. I was helping a lot of third-party developers to create games for Ubisoft and published it. Some of the early technologies that came by there were things like the Rift and the Oculus and that kind of stuff. We got early looks at those kind of devices, and that kind of also sparked more of an interest in those areas, like the VR headsets that first came out. I was also interested in the AR world because maybe even more interested in the AR world. I think mainly because it felt like when I was looking at VR, I think part of it was that I was a bit, I liked the immersiveness of it, but it was, you never get the full realism of that immersivity, right? So I really liked AR in the fact that most of you're basically looking at the real world and you're just looking at small augmentations of that real world. And that gives you a more, in a sense, it kind of gives you even more immersivity because you can kind of, choose to believe that small part is real rather than trying to imagine this whole virtual thing being real, right? So if you can imagine the small part of this real world, augmentation being real, then that kind of allows you to kind of forget the rest of the fakeness and just say, hey, this is actually something that exists here. So, I mean, I started experimenting with AR Toolkit back in the day, before it was even a thing that people did. It was just like, they had like these the image markers essentially of that day, and you're able to get a basic kind of AR experience going on your desktop, which is pretty exciting at the time. And then eventually moved to working on the game engines like Unity engine. And so I worked at Unity for a bit. And when I joined Unity, I had this idea of working in AR and VR. And I got an opportunity really early on when as soon as I joined, when Apple kind of tapped Unity to write the Unity ARkit plugin for them. And so this was before ARkit was released, and they hadn't announced it yet, but they had gotten a bunch of developers in-house that they thought would be able to provide good content for ARkit. So it turns out that most of those developers were using Unity to create content, and so it was kind of like a no-brainer for them to get Unity to help provide this plugin that would help Unity developers to quickly get up to speed on AR. So that was essentially me and two other people essentially went into the Apple labs and created this plugin. And then we went on to support it for the next basically year and a half, helping like all the developers, first of all, to get familiar with. So the thing with the Unity ARkit plugin was it wasn't just an API, like a C# API for ARkit. It was more, there was the C# API, but there's also all these game objects and like Unity kind of Unityisms on top of it, right? That would allow and help developers who are good Unity developers to easily create ARkit apps. If you look at the first year of ARkit, maybe 80 to 90% of the ARkit games that were on the App Store were made with that Unity plugin.
Wow!
So it was pretty successful. A funny story about that was I'd put in this debug texture in there, which was like a blue rectangle.
Yeah.
And it was just a placeholder. And I figured that anyone who was going to use this would now change this blue rectangle to show some kind of surface. So this was the surface. When you detected the plane, that's what it would draw. So anyone could replace that rectangle with whatever texture they wanted. But it turns out that no one really bothered to change that rectangle texture. So anytime you watched an ARkit game demo, you could see this blue rectangle on there. And I was like, wow, that already identified it was like a Unity ARkit plugin product thing. So it was pretty funny. It was easily recognizable. But I think it was basically because we made it so easy for people to do that. Some people didn't even bother changing any of the assets, right? So it was that easy. And also, it, I think, allowed people who aren't really very technical to get a handle on how to create these kind of AR apps. And that has been kind of like my call all this time, is trying to make these kind of tools that can help almost anyone create. The more general purpose the tool is, or the more the less technical the tool is, the less complex it is. How can you make it really easy for people to start creating AR content, right? And that's been driving me for the last few years, trying to figure out, hey, how do we make things easier to use.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. How cool is that, Jimmy? I mean, you've obviously gone through so much, and thank you, because it feels so good that an Indian has been part of making life easier for all those AR VR developers around the world. And I'm super excited about immersive technology, and that's the reason I'm invested in it since 2016 and driving this ecosystem, because I firmly and strongly believe that in this decade itself, we going to have a wearable device, maybe as light as this, which is going to converge a computer and or mobiles into this. So I'm super excited about that. So virtual reality obviously got into the public attention thanks to Facebook, right? AR and MR, obviously Magic Leap was the main company which drove the attention, because there was this 4 billion funding, but somehow the prototype, also a product which was lacking. So from an outside perspective, they had everything going on. You guys, you were part of Magic Leap. There was a great team, great vision, but currently they are looking like they are heading towards the same fate as the general magic company, right? So from someone who was an insider, what do you think went wrong with Magic Leap?
I joined in November 2019 because I really believed in. So for me, I think AR is kind of like a means to an end. It's not the end itself, right? Like AR and VR. I think the end is actually the the kind of the ubiquitousness of spatial computing, if you will. So just having everything be associated with a location, a spatial location, or a spatial coordinate system, right? I think that is going to be the future, right? So what you're talking about, where you're saying everything is going to converge, I think it makes sense as far as here is you want everything to be spatial, right? Like all your computing to be spatial. Everything, you should be able to control anything in the world with your mind, essentially, right? So part of the challenge there is when you have, for example, an AR headset, and you're looking around, you have the limitation of what the AR headset can see as being the context in which it can react, right? So if you want to interact with the world with just the AR headset, that means you only see the limit, like it only sees the limit of what that AR headset can detect. So what I am thinking, and a lot of different people are thinking this way as well, is the concept of a metaverse, or like Magic Leap called it the Magicverse, right? And other people call it other things, right? Like the mirror world or that kind of thing. That concept is the fact that you are able to provide the context of the world, right? It's not just the stuff that you detect using the Magic Leap headset. It's like things that exist in the world, the sensor of the world, essentially. So you are able to figure out the context of the world and then react to it accordingly based on what information you have about the world. So if it was just the thing that the Magic Leap device detected, then it would be like a subset of that, the context around you. But if, for example, you had already scanned this whole location and it figured out all the interesting points, or you had sensors, let's say traffic lights or security cameras, and all those were like integrated into one holistic system, which could give you a context of any particular location in the world, and the things that you could do there, and the things you could interact with, and allow you to do those interactions, right? that is probably what is going to become like the interesting part of spatial computing as we move forward, right? So that is what I was interested in. And that's the reason I moved to Magic Leap, was they had a vision of something like that with Magicverse. And I was helping to bring that vision to developers again, trying to get, so I was working on the Magicverse SDK. I was the principal engineer on that, trying to get the Magicverse SDK down to the level that regular people could access it and make Magicverse like experiences with it, right? So unfortunately, I think I'm not sure what went wrong or what changed. I mean, the pandemic probably affected this as well, but their focus changed to be more of an enterprise focus. And there's probably some elements of the Magicverse still needed, but that ubiquitousness, or the thing that any person could actually, access the Magicverse and interact with it, that's the dream I was going for, and that was not something that they were still pursuing, right? So that's probably a reason that that didn't work out for me, right? But on the whole, I think there's still, I mean, that's still a dream for me, and I think it's still going to happen. It depends on, I mean, there's a lot of things that need to come together to make that happen. So we don't know who's actually going to, maybe it's not just one person or one company that's going to actually make this work, right? I think actually I have no doubt, to make something like this work, you have to have some sort of interoperability between different technologies, and being able to collaborate with a bunch of different companies to come up with this concept and make it work, throughout the world, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think interoperability is going to be such a big thing. But at this point in time, everybody is in a walled garden. Everybody is working in silos, doing their own thing. Somehow,
Yeah.
I feel that rather than these big companies who are so heavily vested in AR, VR, MR, there could be these small developers who's working from their garages. Maybe because they don't have any hierarchy, they don't have 10 people sitting on their head or 100 people sitting on the head and saying, okay, do this, this, they are just going for it. And possibly they could be the ones who could create the framework for the spatial computing. So coming back to Magic Leap, you said, I mean, they pivoted to being an enterprise focus. So do you think AR, VR, MR is consumer ready at this point of time? From my perspective, so far there are a lot of challenges with the technology itself, the price points, the issues with the technologies. Are we consumer ready at this point of time, and what has changed post the pandemic?
I think Apple did a good thing as far as making AR ubiquitous by using ARkit, and Google followed suit. And in fact, actually, that more than 2 billion devices
Right.
actually do mobile AR. So that is already a big thing, right? Consumers have in their hands the ability to do AR. Whether it is, I mean, it may not be the kind of AR that we would like to have, but at least it is some form of AR. And so I think what Apple did there was make it familiar to consumers. Consumers don't, turn around one day and just immediately kind of adopt a new technology all of a sudden. But even if you look at just mobile AR, there's so much stuff happening there already. Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok, I think, is also going to do something like that. So basically, there's AR in all those apps, right? So and Apple have come out with their own like AR quick looks and the USDZ format, and and then Google has its own like Google Maps with AR built in kind of thing, and Niantic has their like Pokemon Go and AR related, like they have their own like platform based on that technology as well. So in a way, there are lots of people already doing this kind of consumer work, even though it's not like the form maybe that we would like it to be. I have a Twitter feed. All I do in the Twitter feed is just retweet or show examples of people using AR in strange and beautiful ways. And even if it's the simplest thing, sometimes even a simple thing, the important thing is people are trying things out. People are getting familiar with spatial computing. People are seeing new experiences and experiencing new experiences. So that's going to give them, the confidence to try new things. You want to make it possible for as many people as possible to do something in AR, create experiences, or even just get ideas and be able to make those ideas work. You have to make it available to as many people as possible, and someone, is going to make that next big idea, right? So it may not be someone in a big company. It may be someone just out in the field. The main thing is people who are like engineering centric may not be like the creative type. The people who are creative may not know how to solve an engineering problem. So we have to kind of allow for this kind of collaboration, right? Bring about the tools that would allow someone who's creative to still be able to do something technical and make those connections, make those, hey, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. Well, here's the tool that'll allow you to do what you want to do, right? So that's I think that's the way to make things work in the future, right?
I completely agree with you, and I feel that no code is the way ahead, because it gives more freedom in the hand of those creative people who are not so who are technologically challenged, and I think collaboration is the way ahead. Possibly COVID has kind of created this urgency or importance or the need of us to collaborate. It has kind of made geography history. Today, with the help of technology, with internet, you could be with any corner of the world, but you can reach out to people and create value by collaborating. You could create businesses. So I think collaboration going forward is going to be a huge thing. Yeah. And at this point in time, yes, I mean, you need more awareness about these technology. We say that we are at the cusp of the new computing evolution, but people are working in silos and not completely driving the ecosystem. If you see, largely the awareness of how spatial computing is going to impact us is being more pushed in countries like US, America, and China, but the other countries largely are not aware about how we're going to break the barrier of what we've been restricted for the last 100 years, the 2D medium, and get into the 3D world. Now, just to make people understand that your web will be interactive, your web will be 3D. It is such a it's a difficult thing to kind of explain. So yes, but in India also, there are even small, there was this school from Kerala, I believe, who was leveraging augmented reality for education, and there are these small use cases which I think should be pushed more. So for my audience, for the people, for the layman who don't really know what spatial computing is, you did give a brief overview on what spatial computing is, but could you delve a little bit more on spatial computing and how this new medium, when is it coming? what are the frameworks that's going to be around it, and how is it going to impact consumers and enterprise?
All tough questions, not easy to answer. So actually, I will say, so I'll start off by, like you mentioned about making it more important to work across geography, that kind of stuff, right? So I joined Adobe about 6 months ago. I haven't been to the office yet. I joined right in the middle of the pandemic. So all my work has been done remotely. Facebook are basically allowing any of their employees who want to work remotely, except obviously for the ones. And I think Microsoft have that same policy now.
Right.
You can work remotely as long as you're not one of the people who need to be in the office. For example, if you're working on confidential hardware or something like that. But for the most part, most of their workforce can be remote now. And most tech companies have basically, the pandemic forced them to be remote. But I think even after the pandemic, just because of this, the pandemic kind of forced them to be remote, and they kind of realized, you know what, it's actually pretty productive. The fact that people can work from home is actually pretty productive. They were scared that people would just goof off and not do their work. But it's actually the opposite, because people get the time to do whatever they need and still be able to, work very diligently. So, obviously there's going to be exceptions, but I think in the wholesale kind of factor, I think remote work is going to be kind of like the gold standard as we move forward, right? Coming back to the question of what is spatial computing, right? So what is spatial computing? It's so currently, if you think about the different evolutions of computing, we had the mouse and keyboard and your screen, and then you had the internet, which was kind of like, it's your screen, it's your local thing, but also your everything that is remote that you can just get access to in your fingertips, like HTTP, that kind of stuff. And then there was the mobile revolution, which is everything in your hand, like you can walk around, everything is ubiquitous. You have apps, you have internet, everything at the end of your hand, essentially. So if you think about those kind of big movements in computing, you sometimes don't realize that you're in one of those moments, right? And that's what people are talking about. Spatial computing is that big movement, the next big movement of how computing will work, right? So the idea would be that everything around you is something that you can interact with, right? So instead of just a 2D screen on which things happen, you can basically look around you, and that table there has some properties. So you can interact with that table, not necessarily just a physical interaction, but you can have you can find out things about that table, maybe the history of that table, by just looking at it. So essentially, it's kind of like the medium of your computing is going to be the whole world, like the whole 3D world. So everything around you is the computer. The computer is not just a keyboard and a mouse and a screen or a phone or the internet. It's going to be everything, right? So that's and for that to happen, you need some kind of way to kind of cover the whole world with a network, really, or like a way to keep track of this information and update it and sense it and transmit it so that people can alter it or play it in whatever way you want, right? So that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying the Magic Leap device is just a small part of what you need to make spatial computing real, right? The device only does part of the work. It allows you to display stuff and it does some of the sensing. But all that data that exists in the world is going to be what really drives the computing, right? So it has to exist outside of the device. The device is just it's like a monitor, right? It doesn't have any function other than to show or maybe do some sensing, a bit of sensing. But then most of that data has to come from somewhere. It has to be stored somewhere. And that's what I'd call the metaverse, right?
Right. So essentially, anything and everything which is physical is going to be digital. Everything is going to be machine readable. We will be able to interact with those physical objects. We'll be able to learn from those physical objects, understand those physical objects, and possibly create a better way for those physical objects to serve us. So I think we're getting into a very, very fantastic world. Could you also delve a little bit onto the enabler technologies around it, like the sensors, the artificial intelligence, IoT, 5G? What role is all of these technologies going to play as an enabler for spatial computing?
The thing is what I was talking about before. How do these technologies interoperate? It's going to be very important because I don't think we have a good, we don't currently have, unless it's something that, I'm not aware of, we don't currently have a good, like, if you call it a mesh to bring all these things together.
Right.
There's no glue. There's no interoperability protocol. So that's what we need. And that's some of the things that we need to figure out, right? Like, for example, I think, so the stuff that you're talking about. So one aspect is just the AR devices. They're going to provide some information. There's like the AR devices themselves are kind of like things that have machine learning in them, and they have all this kinds of software in them already, right? So, for example, to do a SLAM algorithm, you do some kind of computer vision and you do some machine learning to figure out where you are in the world, that kind of stuff. So all that information can now be sent up to be saved somewhere. So you can basically scan your room, and that scan could be part of the, that basically contributes to a bigger scan that basically, or a bigger, the scan of, like, let's say you just walking through a mall, your scan of that mall might be contributing to hundreds or millions of scans that have already gone up from that mall. And then you just, you have the ability to read that. And then the other part is the current scan only takes, the current way we look at things, we only have a small subset of the actual information that we need, right? So for example, with the LiDAR scanner, you have a lot more information, maybe. You have like the depth information as well. But you don't have, for example, object information, right? So you can look at it and you'll have the video of something in your background, but you may not recognize that. You will recognize it, but the machine does not know that is a lamp, for example, right? It only knows that it sees something there, unless you run some kind of computer vision algorithm or object detection algorithm. So all that can be done if you send up this picture up to the cloud, and you could have that happening in the background, and then it figures out what an object is and what it is, and you can provide information about it. Maybe you can look it up in a database. You can you can do things of that nature, right? Where things are so all these technologies come together to basically provide a kind of like, you have to provide a seamless experience, right? 5G comes in where you don't have any, you can send up some of this information in a much faster kind of way, And then edge computing comes in, where you could have some of these machine learning and computer vision algorithms sitting on the edge rather than having it to go all the way up to the cloud and come back, kind of thing. So all these technologies can contribute to a very unified kind of spatial computing end game, except I don't think there is something that is actually meshing all these together properly. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who said, like, technology that's advanced enough is indistinguishable from magic, right? That's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to, right? This is where we can mesh all these technologies together, and they kind of work in such a way that you are amazed, right?
You pointed out Arthur C. Clarke's quote. It's definitely good. Whatever is coming now is going to be indistinguishable from magic, and that's the exciting part. You spoke about LiDAR. iPhone 12 Pro has got LiDAR sensing capabilities on the phone, and possibly that is going to play a role in kind of creating the spatial world. Today, definitely we have quite a lot of drawbacks and challenges with, because it's not completely in sync. There are a lot of things that still needs to be stitched together. Kevin Kelly, I think from Wired, said that spatial computing is still 25 years away. But I think the rate at which technology is growing, I think it's definitely going to be much faster than that. So you are with Adobe at this point in time. Would you like to talk a little bit about Project Aero, and how important is India market for Adobe? Also, one more question, is Adobe looking at collaborating, supporting the AR, VR, MR developer content creator ecosystem here in India?
First of all, I'm not here on behalf of Adobe, so I have to clarify that as a disclaimer. I'm not speaking on behalf of Adobe.
Right.
As far as Adobe is concerned, I mean, Aero is, I think for me, Aero is a good platform for me to kind of work on, because it has a lot of the properties that I'm looking for, right? So the aim of Aero is essentially to make AR development easy for just, creative artists, essentially, right? To make anyone be an AR developer, right? And I think that's a great aim to have, right? So that someone who already knows how to use Photoshop, or someone who already knows how to use any 3D, I mean, even if you don't know how to use 3D applications, just 2D applications, right? Like Photoshop or Spark or whatever it is, and you can make some of that content appear in AR. That makes it, something that is, as I said before, you don't know where the next big thing is going to come from, right? These ideas need to kind of percolate, need to have people come together and try to collaborate and try to figure things out. And the more of these people that you have that can create these AR experiences, the better it is. So that is essentially my aim with Aero, is try to make it the best platform so that as many people as possible can have access to AR. Now, as far as Adobe's plans for India, I really don't know much about that. But I think, Adobe is a global company. I think they have a very, actually their CEO is Indian as well, right? But I don't think they're a global company, so they will try and adapt things that are needed for the Indian market. I don't know. Again, this is just speculation on my part. I don't have any inside information about how Adobe is going to market this for India. If you'd seen some of the Adobe Max presentations, actually the Adobe Max presentations are all online still. So because this was a virtual event for the first time,
Right.
we had like the biggest attendance ever. If your listeners are interested in some of these Aero interactions, there is a few Aero specific Adobe Max sessions that they can look at to see more about it, find out more about it.
This whole digitization, this virtual events, I believe it's going to open up huge opportunities. I mean, this COVID obviously had its drawbacks. I mean, there's millions who have been displaced. The economy is down, but the other side is it also showed that how if us as humans could just lock ourselves for maybe even 20 days, the environment will be able to breathe better. There will be more family time. There'll be more communication with each other as in at home, create a better environment. And yes, I think we've realized most importantly that we can be more productive working from home. And I guess that's the reason companies such as Microsoft and others have taken this leap of faith where they have announced that they have given a work from home option forever for I think close to 60% or 50% of their staff, and it's only the engineers who are really needed and need to come. So there is this huge transformation is happening. So somewhere down the line, you have to actually thank this natural disaster, which if you see from a positive perspective, you'll understand there's a lot of good things it has brought into the society. Obviously, the entire digitization or the frontier technology, which was on a creeping mechanism, has also been accelerated thanks to COVID, and people have finally understood the importance of digitization. Today, I think anybody and everybody can be an entrepreneur sitting from any part of the corner of the world. Today, anybody who's got an internet connection, whether it's in the rural or the urban area, and who's got a desire and intent, can educate themselves and create businesses. And that's the power of internet. We are at the cusp of the spatial computing. I think in another 10 years, I keep on saying this, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it so much that this is gonna come. Our internet so far has been, it's in a walled garden, protected by these big tech behemoths. Do you see a ray of hope with spatial computing? Do you think it's going to be decentralized with the help of blockchain and other technologies? Would that be a possibility? What are your views on something like that?
Yeah, first to address the work from home thing, I don't think Microsoft said that out of the goodness of their hearts. It was just proven to them that working from home is going to be productive, right? And so, yes, we have to thank the pandemic that forced people to come to that conclusion. But I think it was just they're using analytics. I mean, they're using basically data to be able to say that, hey, you guys can work from home, right? Because they're actually more productive working from home. So in a sense, as long as, again, there are some companies that are not going to be productive working from home, right? And that's because they're not set up to work that way, right?
Right.
So you have to, again, you have to handle those kind of transitions well to be able to do those kind of changes in culture. So like people in Silicon Valley had no problem, but then people even in the US, in the East Coast, for example, a lot of the financial companies or the companies that are, that are dependent on other forms of work, which are not necessarily technical, are going to suffer, right? So it's not a panacea. It's not like everyone. And similarly, like you mentioned, like the family time and the the efficiency of working from home. There's also the contra indicator for that, which is you don't get to meet your friends. You don't get to hang out with there's no camaraderie. The office camaraderie is part of that collaboration thing that I was talking about. Some of the kind of like the office cooler talk, right? All that stuff really adds up to some sense of something bigger than, it's an intangible. It's not something that we can really necessarily, kind of quantify.
Right.
But I think it helps kind of like the environment, the corporate environment or the team environment to work better if you're actually together in one physical location. So there is aspects of both sides that we kind of have to consider. Right. We don't necessarily like, and the thing with the remote work during the pandemic, it was usually with teams that are already formed before they had to work from home, right? They were formed in a physical location before they had to work from home. So maybe there is an effect of that. They already had a team, but what if we just keep forming teams that are always remote? Will that work exactly the same way? Will it work better? Will it work worse? We don't know. So those are some of those things that we have to kind of take into account. And then the stuff about whether it's going to be open, that is a tough one. I don't think anyone has, as I said, like I don't think anyone has a solution for what I think of as spatial computing, which is, an ubiquitous thing that basically provides context for any interaction in the real world. There's no turnkey solution per se. Every company is working on some aspect of it. It's unlikely that there's going to be one big player that controls everything. I don't say it's impossible. Again, these are just speculation, right? I think your speculation of 10 years is also pretty much speculation. Right. What I am more interested in is trying to get to that goal, trying to remove the obstacles and try to get to that goal as well of a fashion as we can, where we can try and make everyone have an equal say or like an equal footing when they start in this world of spatial computing. But in a way, I think if you involve yourself, you don't have to wait for this utopia to happen. I think what we need to do is involve ourselves in aspects of it, build the building blocks ourselves. Like you can be you don't need to build all the technical, building blocks. You could still be just every person has a role in this, right? Like you could be a creator and they could start experimenting with AR. You could be a marketer and you could, start talking about all the different aspects of AR and how, or of spatial computing and how we should, be able to interoperate with all these different pieces. If you are, I don't know, if you're an engineer, you could always contribute to some of these AR SDKs or AR tools that'll help, your collaborators to make something that's out of this world. So I think all of us need to kind of build on this rather than wait for it, right? I think we need to build it ourselves. We are all, we're all given that mandate to build it. We don't have to wait for it to kind of come alive before we partake in it.
Lovely. So I really think that, it has to be a collaborative play. But, if you see, humans have been reluctant to change. We are so traditionally driven. Uh, Anything new, we are apprehensive about it. And I hope that we kind of break away from that borders, understand the importance of these tools, which can uh, play a huge role in human evolution. If every one of us, whether it's the people from the creative field, whether it's the marketeers, consumers, if they all come together and understand that there is this huge shift that we are on, and COVID has kind of thrusted that, and we changed our mindset and adopt the mindset of abundance, and see the world through the lens, which is different than traditional. I think we will be able to create a better society and a better world. Uh, AR, VR, MR, these glasses, I think some of the biggest companies are working on building glasses, which I earlier pointed out, which will converge from a computer and your mobile into one single wearable device. Now, these devices will have inside outside tracking. What this will do is, it will capture anything and everything a person is looking at. What I'm trying to say is that this technology with us, I mean, though I'm invested in this technology, I do understand that it's underpinned by surveillance technology. What are your views on that? And do we need to have active conversation on this before it goes out of hand?
Yeah. So actually, even when I was working on Magicverse, this was like, almost everyone is cognizant of that now. Like the privacy concerns, the security concerns, all those are on top of mind of a lot of people. So there is actually a few organizations. There's an organization called, I believe it's called xrprivacy.org. They kind of take this to heart, and they're basically trying to get all these XR companies to kind of make sure that they are thinking of this kind of issues as they're creating these infrastructure, essentially. And I think that's needed both. I mean, as I was saying, like in Magicverse, this is one of those things. Like one of the things that you need to do is you need to send some a picture of what you're looking at to the server for it to be able to localize. But you're actually not sending the whole picture. You're basically looking at the picture and figuring out the feature points from the picture. So you're locally on the device itself, figuring out certain parts of it, and then only sending like anonymized data to the server, just to provide the functionality that it needs, right? The functionality we need is to localize, right, to a specific spot in the world. To do that, we don't need everything in that picture. We just need some information about some of the, like what are the things that are nearby and what is the function, So this would be similar to like the location privacy that you have, right? Like on your phone. On your phone, you can say, I don't want to provide my location to this app. So it should, the idea would be that you would have that same kind of control over, you can, obviously the more information that you can provide to the system, the more features you can get. But then you have to decide as a consumer, and maybe you decide as a company, what features you want to provide without that privacy barrier, right? So, and it's obviously it's the same with anything, right? On a phone, for example, if you don't provide your location, it's harder for this phone or like the system really to determine where you are, and therefore some of the features that are location based are harder to determine, right? So, as a consumer, you get that choice. And I think similarly, that's that's the kind of choice we'd probably have to provide for
right.
XR devices as well. or XR, I wouldn't say devices, I'd say like the XR system has to kind of make that choice.
Right.
Similarly, for security issues, for example, let's say I go into someone else's property, right? Am I able to see all the stuff that is the context that is associated with their property? Maybe I shouldn't be. So the person who owns that context should be able to control that, saying, hey, this is my property. That is, I have to say, this is going to be one of the hardest problems to solve, because how do we determine who owns a virtual space, right? So we are basically saying that real space has got a virtual space associated with it. Who owns that? So basically the person who owns the title deed for the house has to associate his virtual space with the real space. So that is going to be a tough one, right? I don't know if any company wants to take that on.
Yeah.
So, but there is certainly issues of that nature, right? Security of your area, for example, here's an example. If I, as an enterprise, I basically have my Walmart context, like everything about Walmart in my Walmart store, and then someone comes in and puts a Target ad on the Walmart store, right? So that would be bad, right? For who's going to control that?
Yeah.
How do we limit that?
Yeah, we get into some really challenging space. I mean, what's going to happen next is anybody's guess. I personally am super excited. Last question, Jimmy. I mean, I saw Kishi Matsuda's film Hyperreality, right? I was amazed by it, and I also was scared by it, because what this new technology can do to the world, where the entire world is annotated, where products talk to you. It's obviously going to open up huge economical benefits for enterprises. It's going to ease up life for consumers, but also I'm scared about the privacy issues and so many other things. As a developer, as a computer scientist, as a gamer, as somebody who's a leader in this space, what are you most excited for in the next 5 or 10 years?
I think was trying to warn us rather than trying to think of something that is utopian. He was trying to warn us with his hyperreality video, trying to say, this is not the future we want. The best kind of, if you want to make something that is utilitarian, it has to be kind of out of the, it can't be in your face. It has to be out of the way, and only, in fact, provides, just in time kind of focused usage as you need it, right? So I think that's what the best technologies do. They stay out of your way until you need them, and then when you need them, you get a really focused functionality, and it gets done immediately. So this is some of the things that a lot of people are thinking about. A colleague of mine at Unity, Greg Madison, he's a futurist. He's done a few of these concept videos where they're not actual AR, but he's kind of thought about what AR should look like.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and honor to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your insights. Really appreciate that. Sure. And yes, I think we're living in a fantastic time. Yes, this technology should be more human oriented, because in this 10 years, it is going to be transformational, because all of these technologies are converging. It's not just AR, VR, MR. It's artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain. So all 5G, all of these are converging. Yes, it's definitely, we are at the cusp of the spatial computing. We're going to enter the computer. We're gonna interact with the physical world, and that's what I'm excited about. But yes, we need to be careful. We need to create technology which is non-obtrusive, which is utilitarian, and I hope that's the case. And I hope we enter that utopian world. At that note, thank you. It was a pleasure and honor to have you on XRM podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vivi.